Hi, folks. We're going to get started here. Tonight we will be live streaming as well as appreciating having your presence here as well. Before we start the live stream, I just wanted to share with you if you should need the restrooms. They're going to be down the hall, about halfway on the right-hand side through that corridor to your left. And again, we appreciate you coming. We're going to get started here in just a moment as soon as our live stream is ready. Our anticipation is we'll be here till 7:15 thereabouts. We will likely take a break midway through. And again, I appreciate your coming here, and I hope you enjoy the forum. Welcome to tonight's forum for candidates seeking the Republican nomination for the 59th District, House District on the August 7th ballot. The forum is being sponsored by the Jefferson City News Tribune. I'm the managing editor, Gary Castor, and I'll serve as moderator for the forum. News Tribune city editor, Rebecca Martin, will serve as timekeeper for the responses. First, I'd like to thank the folks at Blair Oaks who opened up the facility for us for this opportunity to have the forum here within the 59th District, as well as helping assist us in getting the live stream established. But before we begin the forum, I'd like for us to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Prior to tonight, the candidates were advised of the rules of the forum. Tonight's forum will include a series of opening statements. They'll each have 1 minute for an opening statement, and then we will begin a series of questions of the candidates. They'll have 2 minutes to answer those questions, and then we'll conclude with a 1 minute closing statement from each candidate. None of the candidates have seen the questions in advance. Each will be given the 2 minutes to respond, and we'll, as I say, we'll alternate the order so that the first person's not always being asked the question. We ask you, the audience, to refrain from expressing your support or opposition to a candidate by applause or making noise during the forum. And now let me introduce the candidates for tonight's forum. First on the left is Rik Combs of Jefferson City. He's retired from the Air Force and a former CEO for a Florida consulting firm. To his left is Kendra Lane. Oops, sorry. I got my order mixed up, sorry. Karen Leydens of Jefferson City. She's worked in real estate for 18 years. And to her left is Rudy Veit of Wardsville, who's an attorney and partner for Carson & Coyle Law Firm in Jefferson City. Two of the candidates have not arrived yet. If they arrive, we will invite them up to join the forum. But at this point, we want to go ahead and start with the questions. For these forums, we've opened up some of the questions from readers. We received about 30 responses from readers with questions. We'll have some of those that we'll be asking you tonight. Others are from staff members at the News Tribune. The questions we don't get tonight, we will be asking you to respond to the reporter who's been working with you, and we'll try to publish those in upcoming issues of the News Tribune. So we'll start with Rik with his opening statement.
Thank you, Gary. First of all, I'd like to thank the News Tribune for this forum, Blair Oaks, and thank all of you for coming out and sharing this with us. As Gary said, I'm Rik Combs. Grew up on a cattle farm, went a little over 20 years in the Air Force and various conflicts and all that, and retired back home to Florida and was a CEO for 3 years for a consulting company. My wife, Jill, who's up in the crowd right now, she's a veterinarian here in town. And we made the decision to move to mid-Missouri about almost 10 years ago. I can't believe it's been that long, but we've got a little girl, 6-year-old, that was born at St. Mary's Hospital. We just love the mid-Missouri area. My philosophy on government and politics is pretty straightforward. It's free enterprise, liberty, and limited government. I'm pro-life, pro-gun rights, and I thank you for your support. Thank you.
Karen.
Well, hi, everybody. My name is Karen Leydens, and I am running for state representative. I am dedicated to being a public servant to District 59. And I want to thank you again for being here, and thank you, News Tribune and Blair Oaks, and thank you all for being engaged in what's going on in government. I always want to honor the veterans here. Thank you for your service. Without you, we would not enjoy the freedoms that we have in this country. And I grew up in District 59. I've been in real estate here for 18 years, as they said, and I've lived in the district, Jefferson City and the surrounding area for over 47 years. Currently, I serve on the board of directors for the Healing House and New Beginnings. It's a Christian men's and women's recovery home. I've been a past mentor and current supporter of St. Raymond's, and I am constitutional conservative, I'm pro-life, and I'm the only candidate in this race endorsed by Missouri Right to Life. Thank you.
Rudy.
I'm Rudy Veit. I was raised at St. Thomas, Missouri. I went to St. Thomas. I graduated here from Blair Oaks in 1971. From there, I went to the University of Missouri Agricultural Econ, graduated agricultural economics, and in the University of Missouri Law School. I've been here in Jeff City since 1978, representing people, advocating for people, helping people out through troubled times, and I want to take those skills that I learned and the ability to practice those skills that public education has given me and continue to use those. I love helping people, and that's what I did as a lawyer. I want to represent you in your rights for good public education, a balanced budget, that we don't keep passing our bad roads and that down to our kids, state employment, get fair state wages, the agricultural interest in our community. This is an agricultural area. They need their representation. I also am pro-life, and I'm Second Amendment rights, but the main thing I want to go there is I want to represent you and be your advocate or representative there.
All right, thank you, candidates. So we're going to begin with our questionings. We'll start with Rik. This comes from a reader, Stan Cowan. Recently, Governor Mike Parson invited a number of city mayors, including Carrie Turgeon of Jefferson City, to discuss ways the state can work with city government to improve conditions for citizens. One of their concerns was a growing trend in the legislature to preempt local control to enact some ordinances, such as regulation of plastic bags or increasing the minimum wage. Would you support or oppose state legislation to preempt city councils and county commissions from enacting ordinances these local governments deem to be beneficial for their communities?
I would not support state action to override local and local officials, whether it be state or county. I think, in my view, a lot of the issues that are involved in counties and cities are local issues, and I think they ought to be handled locally. And I don't think the state government should take an overreaching part in that to overregulate. And so I would not be supportive of the state stepping in and overriding local jurisdiction.
All right, thank you. Karen, same question.
Can you repeat? I only heard part of the question.
Sure. Governor Mike Parson invited a number of city mayors, including Jefferson City's mayor, to discuss ways the state can work with city governments to improve conditions for citizens. One of their concerns was a growing trend in the legislature to preempt local control to enact some ordinances. Would you support or oppose state legislation to preempt city councils and county commissions from enacting ordinances they deem to be beneficial for their communities?
Well, I would not support state agencies taking over the city council and local control. I would support the local city councils, local communities, keeping their local control. Thank you.
Rudy?
Well, I believe in local control to the extent possible, but as all things, it has to be done in moderations. It would not be feasible for Wardsville to have a ordinance that says that they would only allow certain types of bags in their stores, and Jeff City have something else, and another city have something else. Businesses have to be able to operate consistently across the state. We are not separate little entities. So it's going to depend upon the issue. There's never one answer covers everything. Every issue has to be looked at and addressed. And that's why I say with moderation. There are some things local control is good, but there are other issues. We are a state, and every city is intertwined with the other city. And if you have too many independent cities doing different things, then it's going to be cost prohibitive for our businesses to operate. And that is a burden on our businesses too. That's more regulation on them. So uniformity is important, but like this issue, like all issues, it takes moderation. There's two sides to it. Address each issue as it comes, and don't make blanket statements.
Thank you. Our second question will begin with Karen. The state has increasingly reduced the funds it spends on rural highways and bridges as far as repairs, maintenance, and construction due to its budget constraints. What should be the state's responsibility when it comes to these rural roads and bridges, and how should they be funded?
Please repeat that one more time. I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Okay. The state has increasingly reduced the funds it spends on rural highways and bridges as far as repairs, maintenance, and construction due to its budget constraints. What should be the state's responsibility when it comes to these rural roads and bridges, and how should it be funded?
Well, I believe we should have robust roads and bridges, even in the rural areas, and that there's going to be different ways to look at that. I think some of the ways have been, even in your own district, is just looking at raising some of the fees in your area, even in rural areas, raising the prices of the driver's license and the license plates, and there's ways to help fund the roads and bridges. There's also look at the budget, see if anything can be done in the budget to help fund the roads and bridges in every area of Missouri. But yes, we need to take care of all the roads and bridges, even in the rural areas. Thank you.
So just to redirect, so how would you suggest that it be funded? Because at this time, the state says they don't have the money to do it. They are looking at rural roads that would be taken off, that would be far down on the repair list, if you will. So how would you suggest that the state should be able to fund those rural highways?
Well, like I said, they could raise some of the user fees in that area, could they? Would be one way to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Rudy?
Infrastructure is important in the rural area as well as it's in the statewide. And when we fail to provide good infrastructure, it hurts our economy, and we're not fixing our buildings and our roads, and we're passing debt down to our kids. The question is, do we want to step up and resolve that issue, or do we want to pass the debt to our children? Now, I know financing is hard, and being elected doesn't give me an answer on everything, doesn't make me any smarter, so I would listen to the different options out there, but with an open mind. Toll roads are feasible in other parts of the state. I believe they may well work here. Increasing gas tax is another option, and we're going to have to do that. Title fees and all that just won't get the job done. If you're going to get it, we have to have a group sit down and says, this is what we need, let's do it, and put together the financing options with experts. But we're going to have to raise gas tax, and toll roads are possible. The longer we delay, the worse our roads get, the more debt we're passing to our kids. And so it is something it is a condition that occurred during our time. It's our responsibility to pay for it.
So a follow-up question to you. Much of the 59th has these rural roads and and rural bridges, is it the state's responsibility to maintain those, or is it a better budgetary approach to trim back what you're able to repair and construct?
No, it is the state's responsibility to maintain its state roads in rural area. Economy is important out here. If you just look at the number of trucks that travel Route B, our good roads bring economy to the rural area. And if we want to develop an economy in the rural area, the state is going to have to fund rural roads and bridges.
Thank you. Rik.
I've thought about this a lot on the roads and bridges, and I know I've been made aware that Missouri's the 7th largest state as far as roads go in the country, and sixth if you add bridges in. In the time that we've lived here, which is almost 10 years, I've seen a steady decline in the roads, both in urban areas and suburban areas and the rural areas, and the roads are degenerating out here, and the bridges as well. I know we have to do something. I know there's a vote coming up in November. No gas tax has passed since I've lived in Missouri, and I don't know what's going to happen in November. I wish I had a crystal ball, but we absolutely have to do something about our roads. The economy, the infrastructure are completely tied together, and whether it's a gas tax or whether it's an additional fee for vehicles, some type of user fee, the state is responsible for all the roads and bridges in the state, in my view, and we absolutely have to do something. On the toll roads, I'm definitely opposed to toll roads. I've lived in states, I grew up in a state that had a lot of toll roads, and they're a nightmare. I liken toll roads to a homeowners association. If you've ever been in one of those, they start out sounding nice, but they end up being a nightmare. So I would be totally opposed to toll roads.
All right, thank you. I want to pause just a moment and welcome Randy to the forum. Randy Dinwiddie. Let me introduce you to the crowd, Randy, and then we'll give you 1 minute to do an opening statement, and then we'll just jump in with more questions. So Randy is of Olean, is a small business owner in the marketing, advertising, and insurance fields. And Randy, if you'd like to take a minute to have your opening statement, we can do that now.
I've lived in Missouri here for about 78–80% of my life, from Astoria, Oregon. My father was actually in the Coast Guard. We moved here, and I've spent my entire life around Lake of the Ozarks region, up into the Jefferson City area. I started off in a pretty bad situation as a child, and I've seen myself grow to some very astounding things thanks to the work of God and family standing next to me. And I'm running for this position not because it's something that I need to do, it's because it's something that I can do. I've been in the advertising and the marketing field for several years, and I've worked with several different businesses and got them out of some of the biggest pickles that you'll ever see. And I've spent my entire life working for other people, and I'd like to have the ability to work for you this November.
Thank you. So our next question, we'll start with Rudy. Broadband abilities in some rural areas of the 59th district are inadequate, creating a situation of the haves and have-nots compared to larger cities in other parts of the state. What, if any, role should the state have in improving and expanding broadband in rural areas like the 59th district?
Well, first off, broadbanding is part of our society now, and it is important for economic growth. Economic growth is good for the rural area, it's good for the state. It should be something that they would consider along with every other step of economic growth. In order to bring businesses in, they have to have good broadbanding. We have a lot of people who are working out of their homes now, and they live in rural areas. They have to have good broadbanding. The state has to take on that role the same as they take on any economic development for the rest of the state. We have a lot of economic development activities of the state, and that is one that has to be considered. It is rather, not only for broadbanding, but for cell phone access. It is rather ironic that you can be 20 miles from a city and still cannot get cell service. And we all, or most of us, use our cell service a lot. And we use broadbanding. And that's part of our lives and part of our business. When I go home every night, I can look at my emails and all those things. If I lived in certain parts of Cole County, I couldn't. That is not good for the county. We want good people to build nice homes and live here, and we want people to be able to be at home and take courses to study and improve their lives, and broadbanding is an important part of our lives now.
Thank you. Randy, same question.
Well, talking to an advertising guy for about 10 or 15 years, you know, internet is very important to me, or else I wouldn't have been able to survive all the years that we had our publications out. I don't have publications out anymore, though. I would support broadband for the outer areas if that's what the community wanted. I mean, if there was a vote and they said, hey, we want this and we need to push it. Representatives will support the people of the district. It's not our job to make a rule based on a power play. If the communities want broadband, we'll find a way to get that done. It doesn't have to be rocket science. I'm sure that that's not the issue of the day. The issue of the day, we're on a different topic there, so whenever that one comes up, I'll be sure to address it. But I would definitely support broadband if that's what the people wanted.
Thank you. Rik?
The broadband issue, to me, when I look at the state, and is the state responsible, or can the state pick up that function? And I don't think that's a state function. I think the free enterprise system, the free market, the private sector could handle that far better. If somebody can make a profit on it, they typically run it a whole lot better than the government does. And at every turn, my option would be the free market or free enterprise system over government control. Thank you.
Karen?
Well, internet, as we know, is very important to everybody. I'm in real estate, and I'm on the internet a lot, as everybody else is, so it's a very important issue to our society and to this county and to rural areas. As it's been spoken, there's some places that don't have it, but I believe it is a matter of free enterprise, and that probably will be better handled in that way. However, I'm here to represent the people, so I will do what the people want and stand by the will of the people in that issue.
All right, thank you. Randy, for years, the legislature has studied the issue of state employee pay and wrangled over how to fix it with limited results. Do you believe state employee pay is an issue, and if so, how would you fix it?
Now you're talking about subjects I like to get into. We have a symptom to a problem. Missouri's economy is like one of the lax economies in the economic growth field. The lack of tax income collected is the result of lack of pay for our students, teachers. You know, we talk about how we want to have great education and we want to have our children grow up to have more, and we want to do that through education, but it's going to take a lot more money to be able to back these school teachers to be able to make that happen. How do we do that? It's not by collecting more taxes. It's about grabbing a hold of businesses and get them to come to the state of Missouri and relaxing these regulations and let these people do what they have to do to put people to work. Education is not the problem. The problem is Missourians have to stand up for people that are going to go in and get businesses to come to Missouri so that we can give people better and more through hard work. I think that education is important, but it's not the problem.
Okay, so I'm sorry, but I agree with everything you've said, but it really doesn't address the question. So, do you believe state employee pay is an issue? And if so, how would you fix it?
It is an issue. Our state employees and our school teachers, they are absolutely very important and fundamental. I mean, my wife works for the state. The way that you're going to fix this problem is you're going to bring more tax revenue to the state. not by taxing more people that live here because they can't afford it. Most of the people down at Lake of the Ozarks can't even afford to live 4 or 5 months out of the year because they're starving. Some of these outer areas are dying. Have you ever been through Lowman or all these different small towns? They can't afford overburden on taxes to be able to pay for school teachers and more government. The solution is bring business, put people to work, and put work in front of everything else. But this is a capitalist country. We all have to make money to make the big wheel spin. And then we've got enough money to address the situations that you've just brought up. That's my final answer.
All right, thank you. Rik.
Yes, the economy in Missouri, what I was reading the other day, is, by most measures, is about 48th in the country in economic growth. And that does a lot of things, but one thing it does, it retards the revenue streams that come into the state and to the local governments. What we really need to do in Missouri is we need to concentrate on the economy and get the economy going, diversifying the economy. We need to diversify the economy around Jefferson City. It seemed like there are a lot of health professionals, a lot of part-time workers, and a lot of state employees around Jefferson City. Need some more manufacturing, need some more industry in and around Jefferson City, and diversify that economy to prevent it from going into lulls of economic crisis or slowdowns, recession-proof, if you will. For the state employees, I know they've done studies and they've done commissions and surveys. That's a tough issue because it's constrained by what the state can do, and of course everybody in the state is looking for their piece of the pie, and it's very tough. The state employees, I understand, are some of the least paid in the country on average, and that needs to be addressed. It absolutely must be addressed, but I think the way you address that is building the economy, building up the revenues. One of the things that I am proposing is to phase out the state income tax. I've lived in, there are about 20% of the United States doesn't even have a state income tax, so I know it can be done. We're Missourians, so I know we can make it happen. There's an immediate pay increase for state employees right there. So all state workers, whatever you're paying out, every pay period or every month or every year to state income tax, you wouldn't be under that situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen?
Well, absolutely, the state employees issue needs to be looked at. I think in each department it's always a good idea to look at the whole budget and see if it's top heavy, if there's areas that could be moved around and addressed. I think that's one of the things that needs to be done in Missouri and really every office and every division, and see if there's any ways that they could find some money to allocate to the teachers. I definitely think our teachers are in the lowest group of teachers in the country, and we need to find some solutions. It's kind of a complicated issue and has been studied, and I think we can come up with some creative ways as we do try to build the economy, and I think we can find some ways to do this.
State employees' pay has been studied to death. Our state employees, by everything I've read, and I've read the reports, are underpaid. How we pay them, it takes a little broader approach. But one of the things we need to look at is we are losing state employees. We're losing expertise. In a business, I know what the cost is of losing people. We need to show to the other legislatures that losing good state employees is costing the state money. We also need to work with the other legislatures who don't have as many state employees in their district to show them that good employees and retaining employees will improve efficiency. It will affect their own economies by a pay raise, and we cannot just wait on the economy to change because there's always demands. And teachers is a great one to say they need more pay, but so do prison guards, people working for the Secretary of State. We're losing chemists. I've talked with the head chemist at the State Highway Patrol. They can't hire chemists anymore because you can't get them out of school. And if you get them, you train them for 2 years and they're gone. Studying time is over. It's time to sit down and begin addressing state salaries at the beginning of the year. Work with the other legislatures and show the priority. Right now, it gets addressed at the end of the year. Is there any money left over? Then we'll give them some. There's never money left over. The state will always spend what it has. And I'm not advocating raising taxes for it. I'm advocating that if we get more efficient, give them technology so they're not working with technology from 20 years ago. They may be more efficient, and we may have less state workers, and we could pay them more. There are a lot of ways to do it, but we cannot just continue to say we're going to study it, or if this happens in the future, we're going to give them some money, because we're losing good, qualified state workers. Especially when I talk to the auditor's office, they have a high turnover, all the auditors, the CPAs. Every field you talk to, the state employees are being unhappy, disgruntled, and their insurance keeps going up. It's time to address it.
Thank you. Okay, Rik, you mentioned this topic as part of this last question. We're going to talk about taxes. Many of you have suggested Missourians are overtaxed. One is even suggesting that seniors should be granted an exemption from paying property tax, as well as the potential elimination of the personal property tax. These revenue sources are the funding sources for schools, villages, and counties. How should we be funding our schools, villages, and counties if we are removing property taxes, state income taxes, things like that? How do we keep the wheels rolling on the state?
Is that my question?
That'd be you.
Hi. Thank you. Yeah, that's always a big question about is a person being taxed or overtaxed. The latest I saw, the latest index had Missouri rated 24th in the country for taxes. Another thing is the personal property tax. We're 3rd in the country according to the Tax Foundation, behind Virginia and Massachusetts for per capita personal property taxes on the citizenry. One of the things that I think of when we look at the different taxes for schools and for all of our functions in local governments especially, is that they need to be more efficient. Our counties, our cities, they need to be more efficient. They need to be looking at their budgets. I think government at all levels, local and at state and federal, too oftentimes look to the taxpayer instead of seeing what can we do better, what can we do more efficient, what programs are no longer, or which ones are inadequate or not working anymore. Too oftentimes I think what happens with governments, they say, we need more money, let's raise taxes. We need more money, let's go back to the taxpayer. I don't think that's always the answer. I know personally for me, we pay quite a bit of taxes for schools and fire department and the library and other functions. I know talking to people all across the district, a lot of people feel like they're overtaxed. And I just think that local government, state government, federal government needs to get more efficient, needs to get more proactive, and get out there in front of the needs of the people and listen to the folks. Thank you.
So again, I'm going to redirect you to the question. So if, and I'll use Blair Oaks School District as an example, districts considering the idea of building a building across the street here, how are they going to pay for that? There's not that amount of efficiencies. And when you look at the 59th district, it's primarily agriculture, residential properties, the lowest tax classifications in the state. So if we are taking those off of the rolls, how is a district like Blair Oaks going to be able to do something?
Well, as always, the people are going to vote on it. These proposals about doing away with phasing out income tax and doing away with personal property tax or exempting seniors from property tax, that's got to be voted on. That's not my call or anybody up here, and it's going to be the people that vote on that. And that's the same thing with your local taxes. That's all going to be voted on year after year or election after election for Jefferson City for their new high school. It was voted down time and again. This last time it did get voted in. So, I mean, if they've got to raise some taxes on properties and businesses, that's one thing, but that's got to be approved by the people. And these proposals once again, the people of Missouri are going to have to decide what they're willing to live with and what they're willing to live without as far as taxes go.
All right, thank you. Karen?
Well, I believe that as he said, the people are going to vote on this. We don't know exactly what you're talking about when you just say hypothetically, you know, they're talking about possibly taking away or exempting seniors and taking away some property taxes. So I agree that we need to probably check the budget again to see if we can trim down anything. That's the first thing to do in every area. Make sure there's not waste in that area, that rural area, wherever we're talking about, and see if there's any waste in the area. And you're going to have to pay for it somehow, and the people are going to vote on it. I'd have to see the exact written issue before I could tell you exactly, you know, what we're talking about here. Thank you.
Rudy?
I don't know of anyone here that wants to pay more taxes. And while we can't have voter or audience participation, if they'd all stand up, would be interesting. No one would stand up and saying they want to pay more taxes. But we also have a personal responsibility to educate our children, maintain our roads. And it is easy to always say, let's have a tax cut. If it benefits me, I want it. That's the general approach. But you cannot make proposals like get rid of all income tax or property tax, which is doing out some very elaborate studies to figure out how you're going to replace them. It'd be chaos. And I am a big supporter of the government has to cut, and the government has to stay on its everywhere they can, and you have to keep a constant vigil on the state agencies that they don't waste money. You give them money, then they'll find a way to spend it. And so you have to stay on it. But we also know there are some basics, and you cannot make a fundamental change coming out here and say, okay, no property tax now, and then we're going to take 10 years to figure out how we're going to pay it. When you take property tax from one person, you're putting taxes on somebody else, and that person's going to yell. Nobody said eliminate the tax. They just said eliminate a type of the tax. Well, it may be the wrong tax. I don't know, but I can't sit up here and tell you that in good faith that you ought to eliminate your property tax or whatever and suddenly go to a different method until we see a method to do and a way to organize to do it. One-line items like eliminate tax are great speaking points, but they don't get the job done. It's our responsibility as a legislature to run the government. If there's a way to an inequity in the tax and it can be fixed by some other method, then it's something to be looked at. But once you remove a tax in one area, it's got to come somewhere else. So someone else is going to pay for it. And who has the most power in the government to get the best tax cut? It's not you.
Randy?
We're all grown-ups here. We all hate paying taxes. We've all had to pay taxes. We have to pay what we have to pay to keep our children educated, keep our roads up. We all know that. I believe that a state representative has to have a plan, and I have a plan. We all talk about President Trump and whether or not these tariffs that he's doing is the greatest thing in the world or not. I'll tell you, it's a great thing for the state of Missouri. As your state representative, I'm going to be on the phone to that hot list of every single thing that's being tariffed to try to poach those companies to Missouri, to these areas, to fill these open, vacant manufacturing plants. Innovative ideas. It always has to be more money. It's not going to the people that already live here. It's apparent that we can't afford it. None of us can afford it. So we have to be willing to have an open mind to do some different things. This sounds kind of aggressive, but you know, if you've got a company that's been in business for 30 years and you've got a state pool of tax money that comes in or a county tax, why not take a percentage of that and loan it to some of these businesses that are providing jobs? We all need jobs, right? Well, that interest money that the state would make off of those loans would go straight to this tax that goes to your house tax, your personal property tax. And eventually, if we grew the economy enough with these businesses that are moving in, then we've got plenty of money. Then potentially 10 years down the road, we're like Texas. We don't even have a state tax. But we have to be willing to open our minds to some different things than what we've been doing in the same old lax repetitive crap that we've been doing for the past 50 years, and it's gotten us nowhere fast. I don't mean to sound harsh, but the truth of the matter is Missouri will never get off the floor if we don't stand up. It's time to start doing some things different and getting a little bit more aggressive about how we get things done, or we're sitting in a position to where we're always in the same place, which is nowhere fast.
All right, thank you. The next question will begin with Karen. Given the small tax base of rural communities, school districts like Blair Oaks don't have enough bonding capacity for new construction or expansion. How would you address the funding challenges that rural school districts and villages face? For instance, change the bonding capacity, push to increase the tax load on residential and agricultural properties, which make up the bulk of the tax base, or would you do something else?
I still have a hard time. I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I have a hard time hearing you tonight.
Sure. Given the small tax base of rural communities, school districts like Blair Oaks don't have enough bonding capacity for new construction or expansion. How would you address the funding challenge rural school districts and villages face? Would you, for instance, change the bonding capacity, push to increase the tax load on residential and agricultural properties, which make up the bulk of the tax base, or would you do something else?
Well, you'd have to look at all those issues and see what would be best for this community. It's always going to be a matter of what the people want. And you'd have to look at the bonding issues first and the other issues and find out, or maybe come up with some creative ways to do some funding. I mean, one idea that I've had is that maybe Missourians might want to get creative and come up with some new ideas for funding things, even in education. And but ultimately, it's going to be up to the people to decide how to come up. They're going to vote on how they want to do it in the local schools.
Let me recharacterize this question a bit. Rural school districts have a small assessed value, and so they're allowed to basically borrow up to 15% of that assessed value. So when you get ready to do a large construction project or an expansion, it's virtually impossible to do it just through going to get a loan like you would if you're buying a house. So there have been efforts to increase the bonding capacity. It's not a question of what other ways to raise funds, it's how can we make it more equitable for rural school districts to be able to grow, much like a larger school district that has industry or it has a larger population base can more easily expand and grow to meet demand.
Well, they might be able to, like I said, come up with some creative ideas to have industry there and maybe expand some different ideas at the school to come up with some more, to bring in more people, actually, to grow your district, grow your school. Like this school has grown and other schools have grown and increased their base of people. So that increases their ability to borrow money, increases their capacity to do more in the future.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Rudy.
Well, I have talked to all the superintendents in my district, and I talked to Mr. Superintendent Jones, and I'm well aware of the problem. But being elected, as I told you in the beginning, doesn't mean I have every answer. It hasn't. My training of learning to listen and solve problems is what it's about. We have to address whether or not you can increase the bonding capacity. It seems like a logical thing to do, but you also have to look at whether or not your bonds are going to sell if you have too high of capacity. So every district's going to have different requirements, but it is something that's going to have to be addressed, and we need to get the right people together, the superintendents, and draft something that will meet their needs. I agree there's a need, but for me to tell you it should be 15% versus 20%, I can't give you that answer. I know there's a problem, and as a lawyer, that's what I'm trained to deal with, problems. And that takes investigation and listening to other experts in the field. And until we hear what bonding companies have to say, whether they would lend to them or what the different options are from the superintendents. Those are the people who see the problems. The local school boards, they know the problems. That's where we go to get the ideas from. We don't tell them from the legislature what to do or how to do it. We listen to their problems, and then we help them solve them.
Thank you. Randy?
Drove by a lottery sign off of Highway 54, like, I think it was 3 or 4 days from the last time I had seen it. It showed over $100 million that we've wasted on lottery. And we're here at the school wondering how we're going to keep up our schools for our kids, as we have an outrageous problem in this state with wanting to make it big quick, in my opinion. There's a ton of ways that we can increase the amount of revenue into a school system if we look at where we're at. You know, we're in a basketball court. There's a football stadium here. Now, this sounds often far-reached, and it probably would never happen. But why aren't we allowing business owners that desperately need to reach customers to advertise on these walls? Why aren't we allowing for small semi-pro football and basketball to come and rent out these places to open a tax revenue, because they're blowing their money on something else anyway? It sounds far-fetched, but it's an idea. We can sit here and we can chew hash about the same thing that we've done for the past 50 years and still come up with absolutely nothing, or we could pick up a phone and try to figure it out. I've been a troubleshooter my entire life, and the solution to this problem is not going back to the same well that's dry. It's finding a new one, digging it, having a solution, and then fulfilling that. And that's what I plan on doing if I'm elected. I'm not going to sit back and ask the same questions about the same things that we all know. Smaller schools deserve the exact same type of education and school building as the large ones. And we have to find innovative ideas without stealing from the others to make that work. And I'm willing to do that.
Thank you. Rik?
Yes, I think with the local school districts and all that, and the rural districts, as you framed the question, I think certainly as a big advocate of local control, I think you have to go to the superintendents, the school boards, and the people there locally to get an idea of what their particular needs are and what they can do and what they can't do. I think initially expanding the bond capacity, to me, logically would make the first place that I would go. Expanding that bond capacity. As far as taxes go for residents and agriculture taxes and all that, once again, that would be up to the local people, and they would be approving it anyway. But I'm certain that every district has its own challenges, but every district is different in their own way, as people are different. And so their needs are going to be fulfilled from within. And as Rudy was saying, you know, it's good to talk to the superintendents, the school boards, and get out there with that local district and allow them the freedom to work that issue. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're at a spot. Why don't we take about a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and we have some more questions for you.
How are you doing?
No calls?
It's fine. Oh. Okay.
Okay, I think we'll make our ways back to our positions and ask some more questions. Okay, so let's resume. This first question will be going to Rudy first. Multiple readers have raised this question, so we tried to take several of the different ways they expressed it and tried to boil it down into one question. So, the question's about gun control, gun legislation, all right? So it's going to be a little bit of an unusual format. There are 4 questions surrounding gun regulations that this person's asking. So you'll ask for first with a yes or no answer. We're going to start with Rudy, and it'll just be give me a yes or no if you're in favor of it, okay? Then at the end of those 4 questions, we'll give you an opportunity to kind of summarize within your 2 minutes, all right? I think it'll be more clear as we go along, all right? So are you in favor of background checks? Rudy?
Yes.
Randy? Background checks for guns?
Absolutely, yes.
Rik?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Okay. A minimum age for gun purchase? Rudy?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes, absolutely.
Rik?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Bump stocks and high-capacity weapons, or high-capacity magazines, sorry.
Did you say bump stocks and or?
Bump stocks and high-capacity magazines. Are you in favor of,
I'm not in favor of bump stocks.
but you are of high
I'm not.
capacity?
I guess it depends on how you define it. So no, I am opposed to those things that. I'll answer your question. Yes, I'm opposed to those.
Thank you. Randy?
Yes, I'm opposed.
Rik?
So the question is on bump stocks and high-capacity magazines?
Yes.
We're either opposed to them or
In favor of them?
in favor.
Karen?
In favor.
All right. And assault weapons? Rudy?
Well, I object to the definition of assault weapons. I think it's a loaded question. So I believe there are certain guns out there that people have that are legitimate and serve a useful purpose. And so I'm not certain what you mean by assault weapons.
Name a weapon.
Name a weapon.
Machine gun?
Yeah.
Fully automatic guns, no. Semi-automatic weapons, I believe people have a right to, and I don't think it's feasible to try to eliminate them at this time.
All right. Randy?
If you want to join the military, join the military. But I don't believe that common everyday people should be carrying machine guns in public. So my answer is absolutely not.
Rik?
I'm in favor of, if you want to call it an assault rifle, the assault type rifles. I'm in favor of those. The more the better.
Karen?
I'm in favor also.
Okay. Now we'll start with Rudy. You have 2 minutes to explain your views on any potential gun legislation that you would support if you were elected to the state legislature.
I believe in the Second Amendment, but I also believe that we have to have reasonable regulations out there. If we don't, the next generation is not going to tolerate the guns that we're used to having. For instance, I don't see any reason for bump stocks. I don't believe it's wrong to ask people to take a conceal and carry class. I don't think it's wrong to require people to have lessons on certain types of guns. I'm not anti-gun, but I do believe we have to have reasonable regulations on guns so that we don't have another incident where we have a bump stock going off and people use that as an excuse to try to infringe on our other rights to bear arms. And assault, we wrongfully classify certain weapons as assault weapons. They're not assault weapons, all of them. I certainly am opposed to anything that's fully automatic, and there are going to have to be reasonable limits placed on guns, and I know that, and I would support reasonable limits, but what is reasonable is where we may well differ. But I am a strong believer. I have some of those guns, and I hunt. I like guns, and we shoot guns at my cabin. But I don't have guns that shoot 50 rounds. I don't have fully automatic weapons. I don't have bump stocks. And there's nothing wrong with requiring training before people obtain a gun and getting a permit.
Thank you. Randy?
Just ask any person that's lost their child in the middle of a school day to some crazy guy that walks in with a gun and shoots up the school. Yeah, that wasn't the gun that did that. It was a crazy person that did that. But we have to put things in place that protect our children and our public. We can't just have any idiot out there that has absolutely no common sense carrying weapons. We have to do background checks, and of course, anybody that's had a felony conviction should never have a weapon, because what ends up happening with that weapon is probably not desirable to the common public. I'm 100% for weapons. I don't believe that the weapon is the problem, but I'm 100% against having assault type of weapons in public. If you want to join the military, join the military. If you want to have a handgun, have a handgun. If you want to have a gun that's out shooting whatever, deer, whatever you're hunting. But after what I've seen on television, after what everybody here has seen on television, could you imagine what you would feel like if you went to home one day and found out that there had been somebody at the school and shot it up? So we have to use some common sense about what our legalities are and what our rights are. We all have a right, but if we extend those rights to the wrong person, then what happens?
Thank you. Rik?
Thank you, Gary. Gun rights is a big issue for me. I'm a gun owner, have always been. My parents were gun owners, hunters. We've got over 30,000 gun laws in this country. One of the big problems is the gun laws aren't always adhered to, even by our local law enforcement and federal agencies. I think we have too many gun laws. I think too many people use guns as a scapegoat for mental illness and other inefficiencies and deficiencies, if you will. Some of the big school shootings that they like to plaster about on the media and use an emotional appeal. There were many, many warning signs that were overlooked in a lot of those cases. Many warning signs. And so I think we need to do a better job of what we've got. We need to do a better job with mental health than we've been doing. But as far as blaming guns for things, I think that's not the right answer. A gun is a tool. That's all it ever will be. You can kill a person with a knife. I'll give you a good example. Mexico, extremely strong gun controls, but per capita, much higher homicide rate than the U.S. They don't use guns that much. The cartels do, and the government does down there. But what does everybody else use? Machetes, knives, baseball bats, etc. So I'm all about gun rights, and gun rights are not just the Second Amendment. Gun rights are a God-given right. The right and the ability to defend your family is a God-given right. And the way most people can do that in the United States is having a firearm. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen?
Well, I support the rights of the people to defend themselves and their families. Like Rik said, I don't believe it's a gun issue. The guns are the same as they were 150 years ago. It's a cultural issue. And like we've just said, Rik said, if you don't have guns in your house, you can't protect yourself. So I believe, and even back if you look at World War II, I think one of the reasons they say they didn't invade our country was because everybody had guns in their homes. So they knew that they better not invade the United States. So as a legislature, I'm bound to the Missouri Constitution, which says we have the right to keep and to bear arms and ammunition. So I believe in having guns to protect ourselves. Like Rik said, it's a God-given right. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question will go to Randy. Readers Shelley Sawyer and Jeannie McGowan had this question on this topic. What are your thoughts about limiting lobbyist gifts and contributions and more transparency in campaign finances? Do you support the Clean Missouri Amendment?
Okay, where do I start with that one? I don't accept any lobbyist or campaign gifts at all, because what you run into, in my opinion, and not everybody is like this, I'm sure, is who's paid for that sign. We all drive up and down the road, and there's specific people out there, and you can't name who they are because nobody knows who they are. But I know that me, as a common business person, cannot go out and buy for myself, for one election, 1,000 signs so that people can say, hey, Randy's running for office. Well, there's social media for that. It's free. There's several different things that's free. The number one topic for state representatives to go into office is not to draw money for the party that they're replicating. The issue that we're running into is the Republican and the Democratic Party are doing nothing more than trying to put together people that will draw money in for their party for the bigger elections. What does that put, where does that put the people in the stands? Where does that put the voters? It's our job to teach you who we are and what we represent and educate the people. And until we educate the voter that it's not based on a sign, it's not based on that, because all you're voting for, a lot of the times when you vote for 1,000 signs, is the political party or the group that purchased those signs. You're not voting for that person because they're going to have to pay that back in a lot of cases, in my opinion. That's why you don't see signs from me. That's why you don't see those things out there from me, because I know what my plan is. I'm going to execute that plan. It's up to the voter to do the education process, to learn about the person that they're voting for. That's how you do these things. So, with that said, stop lobbyists from giving people money and slow down the campaign contributions, because we all know where that goes.
Thank you. Rick?
Yes. As far as it goes with lobbyists and all that, I don't believe, and government officials, I don't believe government officials should accept favors or gifts from lobbyists at any level of government. I think it corrupts the system, and I think we all see some of the effects of lobbying in Washington, D.C., some of the effects of lobbying here in Jefferson City, and some of the big cities, St. Louis and Kansas City, they have some lobbying issues as well. I personally don't believe any elected official should receive any gift or favor from a lobbyist. I think it corrupts the system, it dirties the system, and it ends up being a pay-for-play type situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen?
Thank you. I don't believe we should receive lobbying gifts either. And I do believe in transparency in campaign finance. I believe we have the right to know where money's coming from and where it is going. I believe that it's really like freedom of speech, that we have the right to engage in political activities. So I believe people should be able to give to campaigns, but lobbying gifts are just cause problems. And I don't believe in the lobbyist gifts. Thank you.
Thank you. Rudy?
I believe we need to limit the amount of campaign money someone can receive. I believe we need to be a lot more open-see so there isn't a lot of dark money. But there is a U.S. Constitution which gives us the right to give money, so we have to do it within the realms of the law that we can. And that does mean we can limit how much we receive from people here in the state of Missouri. I believe also in transparency. I believe, as my finance report will show, that my campaign doesn't have any debt. When I go in there, I'm not going in there with having to pay myself back and collect it off from lobbyists or other contributions. I believe that the amount that we get is regulated some by federal court, but We cannot have state employees receiving money and gifts, and lobbyists should not be allowed. And you can't distinguish lobbyists from anybody else. If you take a gift from anybody, it's a gift. So there has to be limits, and you cannot just exclude lobbyists as a separate entity. Either you have limits or you don't. And I believe there needs to be more limits. I'm opposed to receiving large chunks of money from any individual, but I also think that our finance reports and that has to be more clear to show what debt committees have when they get elected. Because if you get elected and you owe a bunch of money to your finance committee, that means you're going to have to accept money from lobbyists because it isn't going to come from anyone else.
So a follow-up question for all of you. So if you accept campaign contributions, to use Randy's words, to buy 1,000 signs, you are in essence, what's the distinction between that and accepting a lobbyist gift? In that they are basically helping you with your campaign, and do you believe that you owe them something as part of receiving that contribution? So we'll start with Randy.
You know, it's a tough question, but you know, I wear it on my sleeve. I'm just going to tell people exactly what I think. In business, I've been in business my entire life since 1992 with my own business. And when you have a situation and somebody helps you out of a hard situation, if they give you that contract that brings you through, you've got a special spot in your heart that really makes you think, you know, I got to help that guy back because he helped me right whenever I needed him the most. That doesn't belong in what we're doing here. What we get paid as state representatives should not be the gravy money on top of what lobbyists and special interest groups have for us whenever we're in office. We're to have a plan, we're to get in office, we're to execute the plan, and then we're to implement that plan by working with people without having all of the outside garbage. Now, some people may disagree with that, and that's fine. But I'm not going to accept any of those special interest groups' money. I'm not going to fill out their forms. I'm not going to send them in. I'm not going to do anything like that, because what I'm basically doing is I'm saying that I'm going to support something that may change. I represent people. I don't represent organizations and special interest groups. If I'm elected, you have my word that it will be different in this district. I'm not going to have that.
Rik?
Yeah, as far as campaign contributions and all that, I've had quite a few people, and I'm very honored that people would contribute to my campaign to help me get elected. But I don't think any of those individuals expect anything in return. They know me, they know the type of person I am, they know my integrity, and they know I can't be bought. I can't be bought. Some politicians say that, and they can be. I cannot be bought. I'm my own man. I've always been my own man. I vote my conscience. I'm here to work for the people in the 59th District and their wishes and desires. But as far as anybody expecting anything, I hope the people that donated to me are not expecting special favors, because I'm going to always do the right thing all the time. Thank you.
Karen?
I, as Rik said, do not expect favors from people that have given me campaign contributions. I believe they've given me money because they do believe in me, and I will stand for what is right and vote for what is right. And I don't believe anyone who's given me money expects favors, and I really don't want money from people who expect favors. I can't be bought either. Thank you.
Rudy?
One of the reasons I'm running is I am now 64 years of age, and the practice of law has been I've been very lucky at, and it gives me the independence that I don't have to be nice or to accommodate people's wishes. I've had a lot of people who have given me money, and a lot of them I know, and they give me money because they know that I will go there with the same attitude which I represented them at, to get something done. I have a very simple philosophy. When I go there, I should control my ego, don't go with great expectations, and don't sell my conscience. And I haven't sold my conscience in the 40-some years of practicing law, and I'm not going to start now. Certainly there are people who give me money, and some of those people are very well known in their field and experts in their fields. Do I feel free to call them for their advice or ask them their opinion on issues? Yes. Do they think that it's going to buy them a vote? Honestly, they hope it's going to get them something. I know a lot of them are giving me money because they know me and because they've dealt with me, but I think everybody expects something for their money, and that's just a fact of life, and I have to make sure that I don't let myself accommodate their wishes.
Thank you. Almost all of you have, this will be for Rik, sorry, we're starting with Rik. Almost all of you have suggested job creation would be a priority for you if elected as a legislator. What would you do to bring jobs into the 59th district and the state? So address both aspects there, job creation in the 59th district and within the state.
And within the state. Okay, first and foremost, well, government can create jobs by making government bigger, but I like a limited government. I prefer a limited government, smaller government. And I think the biggest task for state and local governments is to create the environment to allow private industry and private business and small business owners the flexibility and allow them to actually meet their potential or be what they can be. And I think the biggest thing that we can do at the legislature and for the state and for the district is to create an environment, a business-friendly environment that would encourage people to move to Missouri, encourage businesses to move to Missouri, encourage our citizens here to start small businesses. I think that would be a boon for the economy. I think we need to grow this state. I was looking at it the other day, they estimate about 6.1 million people. About 10 years ago, there were just a few less than that, but not many. And I know the last apportionment, we lost a congressman because we're not growing as fast as some of the other states. We need to work on that to create a good business environment. One of those things is tort reform. We need a good, strong tort reform to get rid of a lot of these frivolous lawsuits, and I strongly believe in that. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen?
Well, I agree that we need to grow businesses in the state of Missouri, and I believe one way to do that is to get rid of regulations, that we've had too many regulations on businesses and especially small businesses. And so I think one way to bring jobs into the state and to District 59 is to look at all the regulations, and so we can bring in more businesses and more manufacturing jobs, and just look at ways that we can draw people through our that makes our district and our state attractive for businesses to come here and for people to start businesses, so we don't lose people going out of state. Thank you.
Thank you. Rudy?
Well, we start by blaming the lawyers, and then we go from there. You know, the state needs to do what all the other states are fighting to get their best foot forward. But we look at Cole County. We have $376 million worth of agricultural services go out of here. That's an important thing. I've met with Farm Bureau, I work with Farm Bureau, I work with farmers to how we improve that. They need better technical assistance, Wi-Fi and that on their farms. They need to be able to have jobs that they can use their computers on. We have the Port Authority coming to Jefferson City. We are exploring, and I have met with various people on that, whether that is good or bad. You know, there's a perfect example why you need to listen to other people. I went there thinking that most of our grain was all shipped out of here by truck. We already have a good portion of our grain out of Jeff City being shipped by barge. So that just reminded me how little we know about these things, and we have to rely upon the people in the area. Lincoln University is a great underused asset. We need to figure out ways to do that. We need to improve our medical services in rural America. That is an economic boom. But it's hard to get doctors and have to move to an area where they don't get good cell service or Wi-Fi or anything else. We need to set up encouragement for people to move back to our areas. The areas will grow, and for instance, hemp, which is part of the legislation on, that is another possible product for farmers to use. And I'm not talking about marijuana, I'm talking about hemp, which is used for vitamins, all kinds of things. But that is the key. We have to keep exploring ways for new businesses in rural America and Cole County. And that includes working with Jefferson City.
Thank you. Randy?
The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hunt out every small or large manufacturing business that's closed in mid-Missouri. And I'm going to contact the owner, I'm going to contact the town, and I'm going to ask them if they're interested in trying to put something back there and what are they willing to do to try to make that happen. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to implement to make sure that the Rock Island Trail is completed. These small communities can put businesses upon that Rock Island line to drive tax dollars to help with these problems that we have with schooling and different things of that nature. The third thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get a list of that tariff sheet that President Trump has put on these Chinese products. We like to complain one way or another about what in the world is going on with that and why or what, but why not implement an idea of contacting investors, going to these schools and talking to the VOTEC departments and putting these children into these VOTEC systems so that they can actually get a job after high school. Instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, they're 16, 18 years old and they're going to college and they don't even know who they are yet, and they're spending $50,000 on college. That's backwards. Why not let them have a little taste of life and build our economy? Call every small business that you can to develop these small communities. Have you been to any of these other communities in District 59 other than Brazito? Brazito is a great town. Mr. Bernsketter has done an awesome job here, but have you been to Centertown? Have you been to Loman? Have you been to Olean? Russellville? We need to do something. And I'm willing to do that. I have a plan. I don't have to ask anybody. I don't have to rely on anybody. This is not my first rodeo. I have ran before. Now I need you to vote. When you vote for me, I will implement everything that I do, and I will find a way to make it happen.
All right, thank you. This will be our last question. We'll start with Karen. Based on what you know now, in what areas do you believe the legislature overspends, and in what areas do you believe more money should be allocated?
You know, that's a question that I would have to actually talk to some of the lawmakers. It's one of those where I don't know everything. So they tell me that the budget, especially in infrastructure, has already been really looked at. They tell me in many areas, you know, they've already scaled down infrastructure. MoDOT's taken 1,200 jobs away a few years back. They've done a lot of things in a lot of areas, from what I'm told. So to be honest with you, I'd have to talk to the experts on that and find out a little more about it. Thank you.
Okay, but I'm going to redirect the question. I'm sorry, but
okay.
All of you have been running for several weeks for
Yes.
this race. We're 2 weeks out
Yes.
from it. So as I couch the question, as you know now, I realize it may be a different world when you walk in the rotunda for the first time as a legislature. But as you know right now, what is your instinct that you believe we're overfunding, and what's the thing we're underfunding?
Well, I think maybe schools might have a little bit of underfunding. Overfunding, like I said, I think probably different areas are top-heavy. I mean, that's my opinion on it, that we would have to look at every area of the budget to find out what's top-heavy, because I think there's top-heavy areas in every part of the budget. And that's my opinion, but like I said, I'd have to talk to the experts and find out, you know, truly after you look at the budget, get the auditor. I know the auditor's wanting to look at every area. and check every area of the budget out. And I think that's where you start, is looking at every area in the budget. Thank you.
Rudy.
Having talked to various state employees, their general concerns is that the management of most of our agencies is top heavy. And there seems to be more added all the time. That alone isn't going to solve our budget problems, but that's another area that probably is overfunding. Our schools, I believe, are underfunded. And when we say we have funded the formula, that doesn't account the last session when one, they changed the school formula to less, and two, is they took the money for transportation. That's an expense we have out here more so than is important in some of the city schools. Transportation is a big cost. So while they said they funded the formula, they did not fund the transportation. So that is a very important issue that needs to be funded. And, you know, I always thought, well, you know, like the highway department was all, you know, are they overfunded? I met with some legislators who oversee the highway department. They tell me they're not overfunded. I've met with superintendents, and I've worked with the school boards. I've been counsel attorney for school boards, and we all say they're overfunded. But when you look at it, it's just not there. You know, there is waste in our government, and part of the waste is because our employees are inefficient and don't have up-to-date technology to operate with. So to the extent there's overfunding, I would only see that it would be like in most business, it's the top management area that's overfunded. I don't know of any program right now that I could honestly say, yeah, you're getting too much money. I'd like to be able to do that, but until I see some wiser agenda and actually audit figures, I can't do that.
Randy?
The number one thing that's being overfunded right now is the fact that if I become state representative and run 2 terms, I now get health care forever. Why? Does anybody else out there get that? Why would we want to benefit somebody so much just for doing something to give back to the public? Just think of how much money that we could save by getting rid of that. And the other thing, you know, when we grow seeds, it becomes a plant. Our children are our seeds. Those teachers that are spending the time with our children need to be enjoying it so that they will give them the information that they need so that they grow up and they can blossom. We need to fund education, and we need to stop with the sloth pool at the Capitol. The ethics, the moral violations, the good old boys clubs. We need to send a vote message, just like we did with Donald Trump on the last election, that we're done with it, that we're not going to put up with it, and the status quo is not going to happen anymore. I'm the most unstatus quo person that you will ever find in your entire life, and I want your vote. Thank you.
Rik?
Well, without having the budget in front of me and line item and all that and the way you framed the question, I would have to say venturing out there, being a proponent of faith-based charities and a big proponent of growing the government, I'd have to say overfunding welfare programs, underfunding big times our infrastructure. That infrastructure is key to keeping these wheels of our economy rolling, and we absolutely need to take action on that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. As I mentioned before, we will have several other questions we'll be posing to you guys, and these guys have been real troopers. To kind of let you in the backside of what we do, we send them a number of questions through emails. They're given a day or two to respond, and then we try to turn those around and publish them in the News Tribune on Sunday or Wednesday. And we anticipate doing that with the questions we didn't get to tonight. So stay by your mailboxes, all right? So we're going to start our closing statements, and we're going to start with Karen.
Again, everybody, I'm Karen Leydens, and I'm looking forward to working with you, the people, and collaborating with the legislators at the Capitol. As some of you probably know, I think there's 54 vacancies or so this time in the House. So we need someone with experience, and I've already been over there for several years, volunteering my time, getting to know what's going on, and in a prayer group over there. And I believe we all have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I'm going to be here to protect our property rights. I've been in real estate, our liberties, and our constitutional rights. I want to protect the unborn all the way to the elderly, and I hope you'll join me to make laws that are of the people, for the people, by the people. I'm first on the ballot and your best choice, so together let's make Missouri and District 59 greater than ever. Thank you.
Thank you. Rudy?
I'm Rudy Veit, and I also am asking for your vote. I want you to think about the job that a legislature does. It is an adversarial role. I want to go there and use the years of experience I have had representing people and take the training that I received through a good public education and pay back to society a little bit of what I owe. I am also going there because I like helping people and I enjoy it every day, solving problems for other people. But it is a role where it takes the years of experience that I have to advocate for you all the different areas. I believe in all the basic Republican principles. I'm pro-life, I'm for guns, I believe in personal responsibility, and that's the guiding thing that I want to direct my career as. Personal responsibility. Everybody has a personal responsibility. I want to go there with the Republican idea that no bill should be passed just to be passed. You first see, is it even something we need to be involved in? Thank you.
Thank you,
I'm
Randy.
a constitutional conservative. I believe in the Republican Party, but I don't believe in the direction it's been going, just like everybody else out on these seats. I don't have to run for this position. You know, in 1995, I got called by Heilig Myers because I was a troubleshooter for Rent-A-Center. And what I would do is I would go into stores that were upside down, people stealing things, and you'd have to go through 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 stores per month and clean it up and get a manager in because it was a constant havoc, chaos. I took over a store for the Heilig Myers in Belton, Missouri with $3.6 million in accounts receivable with 44% delinquency, and we had it within guidelines within 90 days. I did dishes this morning at the IHOP because I made a mistake last year on some comedy shows and I lost money, and I'm going to get that money back. I've ran for this position before, not because it's something that I want to do, I believe it's something that I'm called to do, and I would like your vote in August. Thank you.
Rik?
Thank you, Gary. Thanks, everybody, for coming out again. Thanks for listening to us, putting up with us, with a little bit of your life. I'm a traditional American, conservative. I would vote that way. I believe in what I say. And I think all the experience and the training that I've had for the past 3 to 4 decades have led me to this point and make me the ideal candidate to go up to the State House and fight for your rights. As we all know, the basic responsibility of government is to protect a citizen's rights. Allow me the honor of going to the Capitol, being the tip of the spear and fighting for you each and every day, for your families, for our children and our grandchildren. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you. On behalf of the News Tribune, I'd like to thank the candidates for participating in the forum, as well as those who are attending here tonight, as well as also Blair Oaks for hosting the event here at the middle school. Lastly, we would encourage all residents to exercise their right to vote and go to the polls August 7th. So again, we thank you for being here. We look forward to your responses to the questions in Sunday's News Tribune, and I wish you all a good night.